Chicago Black Horse Troop of the 106th Cavalry commenced in 1929. After many years as the Ceremonial and Honor Guard of Chicago, it was called to active duty on 25 November 1940. Approximately 428 men from the Chicago area were inducted. Mounted drills were held in the Chicago Avenue Armory daily, and marching was done along Chicago's lakefront. This went on from November 25th to January 1st, 1941. It was a very busy and very exciting time for all. Eventually, it was time to depart Chicago. We loaded our baggage, field kitchens, ordnance, horses, and tack at the Chicago and Northwestern rail yards. The troops said their goodbyes and loaded up from Union Station for the trip to Camp Livingston, Louisiana. The unit arrived 3 January 1941. We are indebted to Henry Gardner, a lieutenant at that time, who had the foresight to record these events. Henry later went to Africa, where he served with great distinction and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for gallantry in action at Kasserine Pass with the 1st Armored Division. Construction at the camp was underway at a feverish pitch. In our particular area, there were no permanent buildings. The regimental area was being prepared to receive the tents. Many of the floors for the tents were in place. The gas heaters were in place and hooked up. Our first training was on the rifle range. We spent much time on the range. Experience was gained adjusting the sights on the rifle, firing the machine guns, and operating the pit detail. The field kitchens were brought to the range. Notice the ambience at the kitchen. The mud is everywhere. Extensive training was also done at the pistol range. Mounting up and returning to camp. The remounts, God love them, here they come. When we arrived in camp, we were short of mounts, and we received from the remount station at Fort Reno, Nevada, and Front Royal, Virginia, 300 of them. These horses were supposed to be bridle and saddle broken, but there was very little to prove that. The stable sergeants applied first aid, watched them, and eventually brought them out of quarantine. The .30 caliber machine guns were carried by the horses. Horses needed constant care and grooming. This is what was known as the honey wagon. Maneuvers. There were many during our stay in Louisiana. One time the unit was the Reds, next time the Blues. We had the horse and the mechanized squadrons. We also had the famous Louisiana wild pigs. A little dinner music. Another gourmet dinner. A master chef, ready to take your individual order. This is the Cavalry School at Fort Riley, Kansas. Bright young officers were sent to this school for advanced tactical training. The course was very difficult and demanding. Here the men are receiving their diplomas after completing the course. This is Henry Gardner inspecting his diploma. It was never determined what outfit these young ladies were from, but they were not part of the 106th Regiment. These scout cars were armed with 50 and 30 caliber machine guns. Here is Colonel Johnson, who was originally our regular Army instructor just before we were federalized. When we were federalized, he became our regimental commander. He was a very colorful man. Here is a 37 millimeter anti-tank weapon, and that was the unit's heavy cannon at that time. The concept of moving the horse units in portées with great speed and flexibility was good. The mechanics of it were not quite so simple. The unit did everything in its power and spent many hours making the animals comfortable in the vans. The Portes held 8 horses plus feed. Here is our great band. This is a shot of Patricia Johnson. That's Colonel Johnson's daughter, a very pleasant young lady who used to come to the camp with her dad. She would walk up and down the troop streets and chat with all of us. The war was on at this point, and the 2nd Squadron mechanized. The whole unit was ordered to the Panama Canal. Here's the band again, a wonderful bunch of people and great morale boosters. We'll never forget them as we returned from our 25-mile marches and we heard them from afar greeting us with some of John Philip Sousa's marches as we came in from that last mile. Here's the unit exchanging goodbyes. The 2nd Squadron troopers are the ones wearing the steel helmets. This was the last time most of these men saw each other. It would have been wonderful if Henry Gardner had stayed with the outfit when we went overseas and had taken movies of our training in England and the unit's campaigns in Europe. Unfortunately, shortly after these scenes were taken, Henry left for North Africa, and the movies came to an end.